Hi, everyone. Welcome to our EMEA practitioners panel. Amazing CX creates amazing CX. I am very excited to have a panel for great gentlemen joining me today. The topic I think is more relevant than ever. Really, I think we came up with some of these topics earlier prior to everything that's gone on the past few months. But I think in this day and age, with customer expectations that are continuing to evolve rapidly, and uncertainty with employees they're working and how they're supporting customers. I think having that relationship of delighting your customers really starts with also delighting your employees. So, as I said, I have four gentlemen from all different types of industries and situations on today. So hopefully, I know that we're going to take some good things away. Hopefully, everyone gets a few good pieces of information away from this discussion today. But before we jump into things, how about we have a quick kind of around the horn with some introductions? So maybe in a quick 30 seconds, tell your name, your role at your company, and how things are going with you the past few weeks before we jump into this. So let's start with Simon Johnson. Simon.
Yeah, certainly. So I work for the NatWest Group. So I work as a capability consultant in the digital space. So very much look after our internal chatbot, Ella. As you can imagine, due to current circumstances, it's been a very busy time across the bank with lots of things that we're doing. So I'm sure we'll get into some of the things that were happening in our space, really. But that's very much myself, and I'll hand over to whoever's next.
Awesome. Let's go over to Neil. How about a quick introduction, Neil?
Yeah, I'm Neil Hunter. I work for AO.com and I'm the Operations Systems Manager. So we've had quite the challenge over the last couple of months, going from a contact center that is 100% on site to a contact center that is 100% remote.
Yeah, we'll dive into that. I think there's a lot of struggles around that and figuring out how people have either stumbled through it or found some good light there at the end of that tunnel. How about let's jump, Paul? How about a quick intro from yourself, Paul?
Hey guys, my name is Paul Stewart. So my team look after the diagnostics capability for our front end operations who support customers calling in for support and also web chatting and email as well. So looking forward to talking to you guys.
Awesome, thanks, Paul. And then last but not least, Chris Downs. Final word in the intros.
Yeah, no worries. So Chris Downs, head of delivery at Utility Energy. One of the roles that I do, look after the digital space. Previously we were 100% all on site, and we've had to kind of adapt very quickly to get all the agents working remotely, and basically maintain the service for a vulnerable customer base. So basically, this technology has been crucial in order to get us set up, and I'm sure we'll go into that in a bit more detail later.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. So as I said, I mean, I think, what we want to jump into this is from the idea. Let's kind of turn the table from the customer experience side first and look at kind of how things are changing for those teams that are on the front line and supporting your customers. So maybe we'll have kind of a quick around the horn on this one just to kind of understand and set the table for some follow-up questions and maybe just a quick, go through about, how have you seen the role of your kind of teams kind of shift in the past 2 months? If they're working remote, what's been some of the impact that you've seen off that? How are you actually supporting them? So just a little bit of background on that, and then we can kind of move to, how that's actually affecting the service for good or for bad over the past few weeks. So Chris, you had the last words. We'll jump back into you to start us off on this one.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's certainly been challenging. The last 3 months, as I said before, working remotely has been new to us as a business. Predominantly everyone's been call center based, speaking to customers on the phone. People then having to go and work from home. They might not have the good enough internet. They may not have, they might have 4 kids running around at home, and that's not conducive to speaking to a customer, and getting your point across and helping them. So what this has allowed us to do in the technology that we've been using with Bold is to get them all working on live chat. That means that they can then take 2 or 3 customer interactions at the same time that we've been taking a customer phone call. And certainly that's had its challenges, but actually the agents really really enjoy that, and they've really embraced it. And certainly the technology being able to use, easy to use, has been a bit of a lifesaver, really. It's enabled us to keep the customers going, to keep the vulnerable customers on, and to get through to people. So certainly, as a business, in some ways, despite the fact we're all remote, we're actually more connected than we ever have been together, and also to our customers. We are as a nation and as a world, we're all going through the same thing together. So we're really connected in that way, and that has kind of helped us. Everyone's mucked in, and we've got a good service going.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think that empathy point of everyone's kind of in this together, and I'd be interested to hear if the rest of you guys are hearing similar things from kind of customers, maybe being a little more understanding of some situations. But Neil, how are things? How are things? Been the past 2 months with your kind of frontline employees there? How are things changed or struggles or stuff?
Yeah, it's been a massive change for obviously our contact center agents. That's probably the biggest change for those guys, as well as our logistics teams. They're coping really well working from home. We didn't know what to expect. Like Chris just mentioned, you don't know what your staff's Wi-Fi connections are going to be like. We didn't know how many people we would actually be able to get working from home. So we'd kind of braced ourselves for like worst scenarios in those initial week, or in that week of setting up. So we got plenty of IVR recordings put together just in case we could. We were struggling to take calls. Would we close our lines? Would we promote live chat? Would we promote social? But all that preparation, it actually went really, really well, and we got everyone up. So that from a customer's point of view, there was no impact to the customer in terms of transition, and operationally, the analysts within our team, they were keen to look at the differences between working in the office and working from home. What does that mean for average handling time? What does that mean for average speed of answer? All things that an agent shouldn't have to worry about at all. So the agents aren't aware, but we as a business need to monitor those type of things. And the statistics all showed that we were actually performing better. So it's been an absolute eye-opener, this whole COVID-19 working practice, but there's been plenty learned from it.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I mean, I think some companies are bootstrapping and coming up with other ways and surprising customers too. So that's awesome to hear that things have kind of coming out a little better after the past few weeks.
Oh yeah, and from a customer's point of view, with obviously the government changing what you're allowed to do as a business. I mean, we deal with delivering kitchen appliances and all electrical appliances, but a lot of this involves going into customers' houses, and we can't do that anymore. So being able to react and respond to this as quick as we were finding out the information. So things like updating your website, or updating your FAQs, updating your automated responses it was vital that sort of control was within the operation, and that we were able to react to it immediately. And referring back to the bold solution, that played a key part in it. We were very quick to be able to put on the website a very simple FAQ when you started a chat that was getting rid of all queries and concerns that a customer would need to contact us about. So it's played a huge part in the success.
Awesome. No, that's fantastic to hear. And I was going to Simon, but actually, Paul, because I think Neil said something that was interesting, right? I think obviously in the telephone space, a lot also requires in-person visits or things like that as well. How's your team's right now with different things that are going on?
Yeah, so as it stands, so I work in BT Consumer, so we're split into several parts: business, consumer, enterprise, etc. So we've transferred about 7% of our consumer call centre workers to work from home now. We had a few challenges around data privacy and security risks, etc., which have now been mitigated, which is great. So it'll be really interesting just to see, whether this new breed of home workers who are used to working in call centres actually adapt to this new normal, as we've mentioned already. So I would hope and expect that if we don't see any negative impact to our main customer experience metrics, which are looking pretty good so far, let me say, or our overall trading performance, then we could probably look to offer more home working opportunities for our call centre sales and service staff going forward. So when BT has over 300 sites right across the whole of the UK, so there's definitely a lot of potential to review our location strategy and see whether we need so many offices stroke call centres going forward. But certainly the increases in broadband take-up has been really encouraging, as we'd hope, with people moving to work from home, which is making up for some of the reduction in the mobile device sales that we're seeing in our retail stores, which we've had to close down. But yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, definitely. And Simon, so last word on this topic going around, right? I think as I was going to chime in before, the financial space is obviously a very interesting one in this time, and face-to-face conversations versus virtual. There's so many ways you can interact for that. So how have the different teams in your organization been faring in these times with, I'm sure, some crazy demand and volume as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned volume. It's interesting, obviously, since the sort of lockdown came in, we have reduced our sort of branch network times. So, we have gone 10 to 1. The main for keeping them open is to help, and I think Chris mentioned it, around sort of vulnerable customers that can still access it. But actually what we've seen is actually a real shift, like a lot of you have just said, around actually moving our colleagues to be maybe working in a traditional call centre, now working from home. I think for me that the biggest impact as well is actually, if you think when it's in a branch banking environment or a call centre environment, that actually you do have other members of staff that you could have maybe asked for help if you weren't sure how to do something for a potential customer. So actually the reliance on digital support, things like our chatbots and our support FAQs, has probably been really key to actually support our colleagues providing the right information to customers. The way we're sort of continuing to support that remote working is actually our internal chatbot, Ella, is actually, was always been set up through the sort of the Bold product, but actually we're using Ella, our chatbot, to actually communicate to our colleagues for incidents and actually alert them of real-time process changes. Because actually, if you've seen some of the governance announcements that they've been doing, stuff happens off the back of that quite quickly. So actually, from our impact, we've had to do quite a lot of things where we've stopped certain overdraft fees, we've had to stop certain products being sold. So actually what we've been trying to do is actually change these processes very quickly and looking at those sort of customer journeys around what does that mean to the customer and what do we need to provide our colleagues up front. And in the past, it was very easy to potentially get communications on the floor to the call centres, but actually now we're driving a lot through our sort of chatbot to help with that communication piece. A good example is one of our COVID-related incident articles. Within just the 1 hour, 24,000 of our colleagues had actually gone on and taken that information to help customers moving forward. So that's probably where we're seeing the shift of actually now you're remote working, you probably haven't got that resource around you for support. And actually, how do you use some of these digital tools to really help colleagues when they're remotely?
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's good to hear, kind of the flexibility and shift of channels or things. And that actually brings me to another question that I had, and maybe Paul, you can jump on this one first. From support channels. So what channels do you guys typically engage in? Have you seen spikes in any ones and kind of downticks? Have you opened up any new channels for engagement or?
Yeah, we were initially really busy with quite a high demand across our operation in the first few weeks of lockdown being implemented, but we find that demand settled down quite a bit. So we use all channels, so that's web chat, voice, email. But since the COVID-19 crisis, we've changed a little bit, and it's worked quite well for us actually. It's where we've got a new callback feature in IVR. So rather than customers waiting on queues to get through to an advisor for support, we're actually just taking their details and asking for an appropriate date or time slot, and we give that customer a call back. And our home workers just access online queues now and call and prepare for that customer contact. And it's actually working really well for us. And as I mentioned earlier, we've shut down our retail stores, so obviously we don't want that face-to-face contact with customers there. But we're using that resource to support us in this as well, and dealing with web chat inquiries and supporting us, our service centres, rather than focusing on sales. So yeah, a bit of change, but we've adapted really well, and it's working quite well for us so far.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. And for Neil or Chris, have either of you seen an evolution of channels? Have you introduced any new support channels, or seen kind of upticks in or downticks in anyone in the past couple months that maybe you can learn from and bring forward?
Yeah, no. So predominantly we've been telephony based. Our customers tend to want to speak to someone in order to address their issues. Predominantly that's always been the way that that section of the energy industry have been served. But what we've had to do is we've had to operate kind of an emergency service in effect. Helping the vulnerable customers, ensuring that they can get through on the phone lines, which has conversely meant that we've had to then push people towards the digital channels to hopefully, so they can self-serve, or we can serve them over that digital channel. Our live chat that we rolled out at the end of last year, that's now increased 145% compared to where we were before the pandemic. But at the same time, our self-service and our net promoter scores have all increased, showing that the customers are liking that way of working. And we're able to just really kind of react and give the customers what they need speedily. Our agents, we've been able to get on board, get them trained, as I said in the previous question. We've been able to get them on board. They've really embraced it. They really, really like seeing that. They can see their stats in real time. They can do all that kind of stuff. They can see where they've helped the customer, because there's nothing better than to help a customer and that you've helped them, and they've also given that person some great feedback. So it's been really good. We've driven a massive spike on the digital channel, and also where we haven't had the ability for a team leader to go and get involved because they're not sat there or they're dealing with someone else. We can use the back end of Bold in order to help our customer service agents to get better. I'm just really glad that we got the system in when we did.
Nice. No, that's great to hear. How about yourself, Neil? You were going to chime in there.
Yeah, and similar to what Chris has said, we've managed to keep all of our. It's just what we could have dreamed of, really, in terms of channel split. However, the reliance on the agent's knowledge base, which was set up with Bold, has gone through the roof, because obviously they need the answers quick. In those early days of it, that the government guidelines were changing like hourly. So our proposition was having to change hourly. So what we were feeding back to our customers, we needed every agent to be aware of it. And so we call our Bold solution internally Oracle, like Ask Oracle. So that has been an absolute godsend for our agents in just being able to get that message across to them and to the customer. That speedy response is crucial.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So Simon, for yourself, so as far as, you touched on this a little bit, but can you dive in a little bit around, kind of the agents themselves, what is their, what are some of the other pains that they're now kind of facing, struggling with, customers or their remote working, what are you kind of hearing from those front lines of some pains and struggles?
Yeah, I think in relation to the pains, for me, it's probably the pace, and I know Neil touched on it there, in relation to how quickly we need to set up potentially new processes and that sort of help and support for colleagues and customers. So actually, from my own team's perspective that manage the internal chatbot, and our internal chatbot, Ella, is used for helping our colleagues with their processes. If you think, just from a bank's perspective, was what's been changing as a result of the sort of lockdown and some of the government communications, we've had lots of changes like base rate changes. So what's then the impact on our product pricing? we've had to stop certain sales of our certain products. So we offer a lot of package accounts, and because obviously a lot of those cover travel insurance and holiday discounts, the decision was made that not to temporarily stop selling those accounts. So how do we then stop that guidance? We've had to waive a lot of our fees from certain accounts and also provide holiday breaks across a lot of our different processes, as well as how do we continue to support our vulnerable customers get access through cash, and what new initiatives do we need to come up with quickly to get them deployed across our bank and make sure our colleagues are actually aware of what those processes are, while still keeping keeping us protected and keeping our customers protected from fraud and scams. You've probably seen a lot of communications. I think Priti Patel mentioned one of the governance things around the actual amount of people trying to scam people out of money, and actually how are we making our colleagues aware of these potential scams. So actually what we've been doing, and whilst it's a pain point around that pace of change, I do think that what we've been able to do in relation to our internal chatbot and how quickly we've got that real-time publishing through Bolt to get that information out there quickly, it is helping our actual colleagues get that information and apply the best practice. I think the pain probably comes is actually because of some of these customer journeys are being developed very quickly. There is quite a lot of additional rework potentially as new questions or insights that we get from our customers and colleagues. So actually, if we've launched something and it wasn't very clear, how do we then go back and start to readdress actually because it wasn't maybe considered in the design? So I think for me, that's probably some of the sort of the pain points. I think from a colleague perspective, everyone will have technical issues, and actually we are starting to do a lot more remote appointments because we still want customers to be able to have appointments around their finances. And actually, how do we ensure that our colleagues are enabled to have those actual appointments in a professional manner, but also looking at maybe what's the risk, the potential impacts on governance. I think really just to sort of finish up from my perspective, obviously moving forward with a lot of the remote working, some of the considerations that we're starting to look at is obviously if we continue for colleagues to work remotely, what's the potential for customers to bounce back because they've now gone down these actual more digital services, where in the past they may have traditionally maybe gone into a branch. But also, how do we ensure that we're staying compliant, managing our risks effectively, and also from a display screen equipment and well-being, I think as well, they're some of the things that, whilst they're not pain points here and now, it's things that we need to start to consider that actually, if people continue to work at home for longer and longer, these things need to be started. And how do we actually keep that well-being up across the organisation as well?
Yeah, and that's a very interesting point. I mean, kind of, facing that kind of next chapter, what does that really mean for how your customers are going to continue to interact with you, how you want your employees to kind of work, right? These call centers. Chris, how about I'll put you on the spot on that one. Do you see kind of changes you think that are going to for the better, right, in the months and years ahead, how people have started to interact with you now, or how your employees are working that you'd want to carry forward?
Definitely. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think the way that we've dealt with our customers and the positive feedback that we've had is brilliant. But it is a double-edged sword whereby new customers who have come on board and don't know anything else, they will be used to that. And once we get past this pandemic and we become normal again, then we need to ensure that as a business we're catered for the digital space, and that's something that it's a shift from where we were at the start of the year. Everyone wants to move digital longer term, but it's kind of just going to expedite that really. We're having to shift our business plan in order to make sure we can cater for that, because if a customer has got a service that you like, you need to ensure that is there longer term really. You can't go back to how it was before, because as a business that just won't work. I think what I'm saying is innovation, it comes out of necessity, and as a business we've accelerated our plans. Whilst that's painful the first couple of months, I think actually in the long run that will really stand us in good stead. From a viewpoint of an agent, we were limited before with where we could recruit from. You've only got a certain locality that you can recruit from, and once you've kind of exhausted that talent pool, what do you do? Whereas actually now with technology and the way that we've moved, and this system, our talent pool just doesn't have any boundaries really, or any borders. We can go and just make sure that we get the best customer service agent out there, regardless of locality. And certainly we've already started to do that. And that's what this technology allows us to do. And I think it really has kind of kickstarted us into the future.
Yeah, it really does open up a lot of opportunity, across organizations, right, to kind of dip into other talent pools, which I think is going to be kind of nice to see coming out of this. That's a really great point. Paul, how about for yourself? So, when we kind of get back to some kind of normal, as Simon was saying, Chris was saying, evolving forward, do you see anything kind of changing how your employees are working? Are you taking away some best practices you've learned recently?
Well, yeah. So one of the big changes I expect is less reliance on engineer visits. So that's the big thing for us. So as our engineers can't get access to customer properties, then obviously we want to try and deal with more diagnostic problems or inquiries or issues over the phone or via web chat wherever possible. So we're rolling out tools like Live Lens right now across our call centre technical help operation, and that's where we can offer customers visual support for setting up their broadband home hubs or connecting TV devices or laptops, etc. So this is really helping us. It's allowing our call centre agents just to see right into customers' homes. We can view their broadband or TV service setup, help diagnose the problem, how they're connecting cables, etc. All done remotely, avoiding the need for us to send out a BT engineer. We can still use BT engineers outside the home, but inside the customer's home, it makes so much more sense to use this type of tool. So we know it's a much better customer experience, especially with this pandemic not ending anytime soon. So it's going to help us there, and also it saves us in engineer costs. So our in-home engineers, it's a win-win for the business, because we should see a reduction in things like propensity to appoint, agent call handling time as well using this tool, and even NPS scores we should see improving. It's early days in the rollout, but I'm hoping that once this is all passed, that the feedback so far has been positive, but we see that into genuine benefits across both our customer experience and the cost reduction we're seeing in our operation as well. So yeah, big changes, but for the better, I think.
Yeah, no, kind of, I think as Chris was saying, kind of driving innovation, that sometimes you're kind of forced into it, and that's great to see. One question on that, I mean, from the kind of agent side of or technician side of it, kind of using this new technology like that, like a Live Lens or other tools, what are you seeing from their receptivity to needing to be nimble and adjust maybe how they've worked on their day-to-day normally?
Well, actually, it's quite interesting. We've had massive demand. So as soon as we started trialing this tool in the last month or so, we've had demands from all parts of the business. So, we've got a big operation, and we've got thousands of advisors spread across the country. And it started with very small, and we've got lots of interest. It's word spreads fast, and if we've got a positive tool that helps them in their customer experience and their conversations that they have day to day, then they want it. So we've had lots of demand to get this rolled out as quickly as we possibly can. The other key point as well is we've also had asks from our IT support desk. So this is where, because advisors are working from home more, they're having a few difficulties in terms of setup and Wi-Fi issues and all the usual stuff that we face working from home. And these IT specialists have also asked for this tool. So it's really helping us, and it's big thing for us at the moment.
That's great to see that people are liking it and being kind of open to trying out new things and new ways of working. That's always kind of nice to see, and it changes up kind of the monotony or normalcy that maybe people have been going through for a while. So Neil, how about yourself? What we were kind of saying, where you see kind of moving, forward, maybe some changes or learnings that you've had. Do you see anything kind of carrying and impacting how your teams are going to work, kind of when we hopefully come out on the other side of this?
Yeah, I do think it's going to fundamentally change the entire way we operate. From an agent point of view, especially, this has kind of forced our hand into trialing. I mean, we've spoke for years about business continuity and what would it take for our agents to work from home. But we would never have really gone big bang. This would have been gradual over months, if not years, of well, let's try this team working from home. Let's try, and so it's kind of forced us into it. And I think the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. It's working. It works for us. Yes, we've had to tweak some things within the business, of course, like our opening times. So we've as soon as we realised that the whole contact centres were going to be working from home, we thought we can't have agents sat at home with their families still taking calls at 5 to 10 at night. So like we changed our opening times to 7 p.m. And again, the impact of just reducing our opening hours gives you so much width in terms of utilising your staff. It was having no negative impact on service. So these things that we've always talked about and that we've wanted to trial, what this has allowed us to do is force our hand in it. And out the back of it, I think it was Chris that was saying the catchment area of what you can recruit from now is global. So you're not restricted to the regions around your call centre in the middle of Bolton or Manchester. You can literally go global with it. And I can see there is a benefit from being in an office, but it's not crucial by no means. So I do think going forward, the look and feel and the whole operation of a contact center will change off the back of this.
So kind of a follow up to that, and then I'd love to hear from some of the other gentlemen on this as well. So give some thought while Neil gets to jump in first. So now if you're hiring individuals and they're going to be more remotely, how do you onboard them or train them maybe properly or make them feel kind of part of that team? Because I think that's going to be a struggle that a lot of companies, there's kind of the good or the bad with kind of remote teams. Have you guys started to give any thought to that, or how you've continued to engage with them in the past 2 months while everyone's been remote?
Yeah, it's been a learning curve. We didn't know what to expect from this. We didn't know what sickness rate was going to be like at the start of it. We thought, what if half of our employees fall ill? So recruitment was always stick to the same recruitment plan. And with that became tasked, because you start in a business to start in an office that no one's in. So yeah, we were quick to adapt to obviously all the online training tools. The new starters would come to, they're currently going to the office to pick up a laptop. It's not the best way to start a new job by no means. Take the laptop home and then start the training. But it's just something that we've had to do, and it's working for us at the moment. So we can't really complain. We're lucky to still be in operation compared to a lot of businesses. So yeah, it's going well.
Great. Simon, how about yourself? Has your team, shifted how they've trained or onboard the past 2 months with remotes, and how potentially you would think about doing that going forward?
Yeah, certainly. So I suppose from our perspective, we'd already probably made quite a lot of great progress in this space. The reason why I say that is actually we'd already last year started to look at how we start to facilitate learning through video channels and things like we're on now. So what we've actually already had started to do was provide our facilitators with the relevant kit that they needed to actually facilitate that learning. But then actually, how do we then roll out the kit that our colleagues would need to be able to join that and things? So actually, before all the sort of COVID stuff came into place, we'd actually already started to facilitate a lot of our training through video conferencing. The reason for that was, the actual cost to potentially, if we needed to run a course, for example, let's say a mortgage regulatory course, a CMAP course, you could only have 3 mortgage advisors, and one's based in London, one's up in Scotland, and actually trying to get them into a face-to-face location is very costly. So we probably made great strides with that last year and started to implement. I think for us moving forward is how do we then start to define that? So what we've started to do is actually look at our training material and look at how, through either our induction training, as we bring new colleagues in, how do we embed our chatbot Ella that provides them that process information, that agent assist, that sort of support? How is that then embedded as part of their training? But also looking at some of our more traditional face-to-face classroom training, and actually how can we maybe break that down into more bite-sized chunks, because actually a full day's course sat on a Zoom, or I'd log me in sort of webinar sorts of thing, it's not really going to land well, because that amount of time is too much to ask for someone to sit and all day on a sort of video screen actually taking that training. So that's probably the key bit for me, is how do we start to really deliver that bite-sized chunks. I think moving forward, we are going to be bringing in more colleagues, temporary staff, just to actually support with the actual handling of the volume of things like holiday breaks for loans and mortgages. So actually, how can we then deploy quickly using the chatbot to provide them that support ongoing, but then actually deliver through the video conferencing, the training. So that's where we've sort of moved to. And I think it'll be more and more traditional learning that we've had. We'll start to look at those moving forward around how do we ensure we're keeping people regulated in the business as well through video conferencing. What I would say as well is, which is quite a learning curve for our colleagues, is a lot of them now are doing video conferencing with customers and appointments via video. So when you would have that more traditional face-to-face appointment, that's probably quite a learning curve around, how do you make, your body positioning, your language, and how you actually position yourself. So actually, I could see within the training material, we'll probably need to look at that as well, not just this is your learning, it's that whole appointment etiquette moving forward, which will be kind of interesting to see.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's very interesting to know. And I mean, I could probably run through a bunch of other questions for you guys right now, but we do want to leave some time to open it up to the audience to ask some questions on anything we've just spoken about, or any other things that you'd like for these gentlemen. So we'll turn it over now. We're going to drop off camera to kind of answer these, so we can kind of work with some logistics in the back end. So thanks for this discussion, gentlemen. And let's hear some questions from the audience.